Herr. I am a employee motivation researcher. I've been studying human motivation for going on 39 years. I love this topic. I love this area of research. The Incentive Research Foundation liked a book that I wrote, so they invited myself and Alan Schweier, who's another well-known author and specialist on employee motivation, to do a little study. And that study is to look at the booming fields of neuroeconomics. How many people know what neuroeconomics is? Not many. Okay, that's fine. We'll explain it. Behavioral economics, booming field of behavioral economics. Anybody heard of that? That's where the term nudge comes from. And let me just briefly describe what these guys do. These are cognitive psychologists, very clever, who do these curious little experiments on how human beings make decisions. And these thousands of experiments have kind of ferreted out the details of how human beings really think versus the way traditional economists think we think. And we're finding all kinds of weird biases and quirks and idiosyncrasies about human nature. And the nudge is meant to kind of nudge people in the right direction for their own good, kind of using some of those idiosyncrasies and biases to kind of lure people into a better direction of how to behave. And then the last piece is neuroscience. So we got neuroeconomics, neuroscience, which is a little different than neuroeconomics, and behavioral economics. Those are three booming new fields. And Alan and I went into those fields. We went through the jungles of research and found some nuggets. So we gathered up one key nugget from each of those fields, and I'm going to present those insights today. 3 insights from 3 fields. At the end of my talk, we're going to look at a new model of human motivation developed by Nita Noria, the dean of the Harvard Business School, and Paul Lawrence, who's an organizational behavior pioneer. And these guys have synthesized all this new research into a practical, simple model of getting the best from your people. There's also a Harvard Business Review article titled "A Powerful New Model of Employee Engagement," and if you want, I can send you the link to that. Now we're going to take the nuggets from each of those fields. We're going to start with behavioral economics, and we're going to look at the work of Dan Kahneman, a Nobel Prize-winning economist. Then we're going to look at neuroeconomics is next, and we're going to look at the sort of the summary of what they've come up with in the last 20 years. And then we're going to look at neuroscience and the work of Antonio Damasio. He has not won a Nobel Prize yet, but he probably will. He's won just about every other award. And then we're going to make a kind of a overall synthesis of that through the Harvard approach, the Harvard 4-drive model, which puts all that together. So let's take a look at Dan Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow. Kahneman has done thousands and thousands of very careful, clever studies, and he's put together a picture of how the human brain works. And it's a startling picture that you're not going to really want to believe. But the idea is that there's 2 of you in there. Joanna, there's 2 of you inside there. Dennis, there's 2 of you. Eileen, there's 2 of you. They're both lovely, by the way. So there's 2 of us inside here. There's you and me who are talking today. My slow system is talking to you today because the rational conscious mind is the slow system. It's plotting. It takes effort to think. It doesn't have a lot of bandwidth. We can't chew gum and walk at the same time. I mean, the slow system is slow, has limited resources, and it has a really hard time making decisions. Fortunately, there's another system operating in the background. We could call it our partner, our fast system partner. The fast system partner is like a supercomputer, like 1,000,000 times more powerful than the slow system, that when you're dealing with a problem, it instantly draws in all past problems of a similar type, sorts them, and suggests the best route to take along with a gut feeling of do it now, you know. And so we walk through our day and we think we're in control, but it's really that fast system operating in the background. It's don't go there, go here, go there, make that decision, do that, do this. And so 90% of the time we're operating with a hidden partner telling us what to do. When that system can't solve a problem, when it doesn't work, well, then our slow thinking system takes over and kind of crunches through the problem using logic and statistics and evidence. And so the slow system can take over and fix something that the fast system can't deal with. The fast system doesn't do research. It doesn't read books or anything. It just uses what you've got. It uses your past experience to make a quick decision, because where humans came from, we lived in a dangerous world. You don't have time to sit down and think for half an hour well, which way should I turn when that tiger comes at me? I'm sorry, you got like a microsecond to think, and that's what the fast system's for. It's for these instant responses to threats in the environment, make quick decisions. And you know people who make quick decisions, right? And they're confident that their decision is correct, because the fast system provides you with a decision and a sense that it's right, even if it's dead wrong. So people who are always sure of themselves, they're using their fast thinking system, and they have this self-righteous, well, this is right. Well, on further inspection, it could be dead wrong. These gut feelings are really important in business. And that's what this behavioral economics research is showing us. So in the past, in boardrooms and around the world, what would they say let's talk about feelings today, guys? What would happen?
Love.
Get out of here. Don't do it. But what the behavioral economists are showing us is feelings lie at the core of customer satisfaction, the core of employee engagement, the core of the brand impression, the core of economic utility, and the core of the capitalist system itself. And I would argue that every single financial transaction is actually an emotional transaction. Joanna, if you give me a product or service that makes me feel better, makes me more successful, reduces my pain, or increases my pleasure, I'm going to pay you for that. Then you can take my money and buy something that makes you feel good. That underneath it all, financial transactions underneath are a transaction of emotional value back and forth. And so that's kind of where we're heading today. And I hope to convince you that the least important thing, feelings, I'm going to take you little breadcrumb by breadcrumb to the opposite conclusion, that feelings are the core of everything. And if we turned off feelings, guess what would happen? Wouldn't make us Mr. Spock. We would drop to the ground, we would never get up again, because there'd be no incentive to get up. That feelings are the incentive system of the brain. They are how we're paid. Money is only rewarding because of the feelings it generates. If you give me a good salary, well, that makes me feel good. Why? Because I can put money in the bank, which reduces fear of the future, right? You give me money, it's a symbol that I'm good at what I do, so it boosts my self-esteem, which is a very important type of feeling. And money is exchangeable for all kinds of emotionally rewarding goods and services. A favorite night out with your honey, a glass of fine wine, your favorite cigar, a game of golf on the golf course. Here's how weird it is. Okay, here's the slow thinking system, you and me, and these wires are the fast thinking system, the emotional control rods that are actually moving us during our day. And the sad thing is that we, the puppets, are rather arrogant. We think we're calling the shots, but in fact, we don't even know that we're puppets, and we can't see the strings. That's the problem why companies don't understand motivation, because it's a very subtle topic. It's amazingly subtle, and it took thousands of experiments by these behavioral economists to ferret it out. But this is how we think the thing works, and this is why it's so difficult to fix. Neuroeconomic Insight. Now this is a big one. This is a really cool thing we're going to see. I'm going to tell you about a study that was done where, Steve, you're going to be my patient. Steve has a problem.
That's true.
He goes into convulsions now and then. I hope you don't really go into convulsions. But, all right. So we're going to do a little surgery on Steve's brain, and we're going to insert wires into the basal striatum. The striatum Sandy had a picture of the striatum earlier. We're going to put electrodes in there, and then we're going to reward you in various ways. We're going to show you your favorite picture. The electrodes are going to fire. They're going to detect firing in the striatum. Click, 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 click. I'm going to compliment you. You look like you're a fit guy. You must work out. Click, 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 click. Here, what's your favorite food here? Would you like a nice warm bagel with butter? Click, 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 click. How about if I just give you $100? Click, 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 click. Better yet, $200. The clicking level would double. It'll go up exactly with the amount of money that I offer you, linearly. So the neuroeconomists have concluded that the master reward system in the brain creates a common feeling-based metric for judging value. Monetary value, the value of what you think of yourself as a person, the value of your skills, that everything is valued by the basal striatum using a common positive feeling metric. Now that doesn't sound like much, but it's a huge finding, because it means that whether you reward your employees with money or by just treating them a little better, maybe give them a compliment now and then, you're paying them the same thing, a good feeling. So money is feelings, how you treat people is feelings. Who's finance here? CFO? All right, Thomas. Your goal next year is to double employee productivity and profits. And I'm giving you 2 ways to do that. Double everybody's salary, which would make their brains click, or treat them a little better. As a financial guy, which would you like to do? Let's try the non-monetary intervention. And if we do that, it's like it's free. You're going to get more productivity for free. So let's think of employee A and B. Kathleen, you're employee A, and Kay, you're employee B. Both of you guys make $50,000 a year. Kathleen, that's your $50,000, you're A, but you work for a manager who's not very nice. I call that person a toxic manager, who never has a kind word, is always critical, never helpful, never smiles, and you hate coming to work. It's just a horrible experience. You would pay to get rid of that guy. So because of that pain signal, because of what you have to put up with, your monetary pay, which was, say, 10 reward units, 10 emotional reward units was your pay, but we just took away 5 for the horrible experience you have in the workplace. So your take-home pay is 5. 10 minus 5 is 5. Kay, you lucky girl, you also get $50,000 in monetary pay, which is 10 reward units in the basal striatum. But you have an emotionally intelligent manager who cares deeply about you and your success, and you just love coming to work. It's just a fun experience for you. If you were independently wealthy, you'd come to work just because it's fun and thrilling, and you just love it. So for you, because you've got this great manager, you get a 5 ERU bonus. You get this pleasure, which is your intrinsic bonus. Notice it's not extrinsic, it's an intrinsic bonus. It's coming from the inside. You are actually making a net salary of 15 reward units. Now, who is going to work harder? The person A, Kathleen, who's getting only 5 reward units, or Kay, who's making 15 reward units? Who do you think is going to have their head in the game the most? Well, if that's the only thing you learned today, that's great, because this is a big idea that financially and regarding a person's paycheck, you can only see half the paycheck, the monetary pay and benefits. But there's another half of the paycheck you don't see, which is every bit as important as the part you can see. And today we're going to figure out how to pay that bonus. There's 5 buttons that create 5 natural rewards, 5 what I call productive pleasures. And if we can turn on those 5 productive pleasures, we can maybe turn that 5 ERU bonus into a 10 ERU bonus. This is just a repetition. So in addition to a paycheck, people want to feel rewarded at work. They want that emotional paycheck as well. If you want to attract and retain the best people, you better pay that bonus. Okay, now we're to neuroscience, another one of my favorite topics. And neuroscience is just looking at how the brain works, how the brain processes feelings, emotions, how thinking and consciousness work. And one of the top scientists in the area of consciousness and emotions is Antonio Damasio. Anybody heard of Antonio Damasio? He's one of the leading researchers in the world. His scientific papers are among the most read in the world. This guy's a big dude. He's won every major scientific award except the Nobel Prize, but he's going to probably win that for his work on emotions. And I correspond with him now and then, and we have some interesting conversations. So anyway, luckily, human motivation is simple. At its essence, it's pretty simple. And it's simple because it really works like a thermostat. Think of hunger. You know, maybe people, well, you just ate, but maybe some people didn't eat enough and they're starting to get hungry. So there's a hunger thermostat in the brain. And when we're satiated, when we had the ideal amount of food, we'll call that the set point. When we have that amount of food, we feel good. If we eat too much, we feel bloated, it hurts, it gets us to stop eating until the level comes to the ideal, and then we feel good again. If we're not eating enough, we're starving, we feel hunger, which is another form of pain, which gets us to eat. And so there's this homeostatic system, that's the technical word for this thermostat, a homeostatic system that keeps us alive by regulating how much we eat. So obvious. What about sleep? You sleep too much, you feel groggy the next day, which gets you to sleep less. You sleep too little, you're tired and lethargic the next day, which gets you to sleep more. Is there a homeostatic thermostat regulating sleep? I think so. Oxygen, oxygenation of the blood. We're going to hold our breath for 5 minutes. Okay, now we've got the right amount of oxygen, but now let's hold our breath. Okay, let's breathe again. Okay, so that's regulated. It's really obvious that certain core needs are regulated with feelings of pleasure and pain. Does everybody agree with that? Is that can we call it an axiom of motivation that we're regulated to have with these thermostats, and those are telling us when we've done the right thing to survive. And it should be self-evident. We don't have to have a proof of it any further. It's just we can see it. Now, we can ignore our thermostat. Let's say my hunger thermostat's getting out of whack and I'm getting hungry. Well, it's like a force pulling on me towards food, but I can resist that and say, no, I want to finish my talk first, you know, but then it's going to get stronger pulling, and then I'm going to have to really, really use my mental energy to resist that force, that attractive force. But eventually, the appetite's going to get so out of whack, it's going to become so painful, I'm going to do as I'm told. I'm going to go eat. And that's really how all of these emotions work. They're thermostats, and we get good feelings when we're doing the right thing. Insight number 2. You feel good when you're doing the right thing to survive, when you're at the set point. And really what my message today is, as managers and leaders, we want to help our employees get to their set points, because that's when they're optimally productive and they get the most pleasure. So you're supposed to feel good at work. If you don't, you're malfunctioning. Now, so what does the human engine look like? If I could take Gard's brain out and look at his motivational mechanism, what would that look like? Well, I think it would have 10 parts, 10 systems, 10 motivational cylinders, if you will. We've already talked about the biologic drives for hunger and thirst, relaxation or sleep, protect the body itself, breathing, reproduction. So these things are all regulated rigorously with motivating feelings of pleasure and pain. Do you think nature stopped there? It's got this wonderful motivational system. Do you think it just said, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to regulate anything else? Well, that wouldn't work. Because once you start regulating and giving incentives over here, what if there's something over here that's important that doesn't have incentives? You, as a rational being, are you going to do the stuff that has no incentives or the stuff that has great incentives? I'm going to do the stuff that has great incentives. So once you start with a system that uses these regulatory pleasure-pain systems, you got to regulate everything that you want to have happen. So logically, there should be a set of what we call, say, social appetites or social drives that complement the biologic drives, and that's where the action is in this talk. And we have a few minutes left to describe that. So Paul Lawrence and Nita Noria wrote Driven in 2003, and they tried to pull all this thinking together. And they came up with the following social appetites or social thermostats that drive everything happening in the workplace. And you could figure this out if I gave you a couple of hours to think about it. What's so important in the social world that if it didn't have a system to regulate it, we'd be dead? And you could figure this out. Once you kind of see the framework and the logic, I have no doubt that you guys could figure this out. But let's see what Noria and Paul Lawrence came up with. So, social drives. The first one is a drive to learn and innovate. We are the tool maker. We are the smart primate. If we don't develop technologies, we are dead. We are slow, we're weak, we're poorly armed. If we don't have a system to encourage us to explore the environment and look for resources that we can put together new and interesting ways to create technologies, we're out of luck. So according to our theory here, there has to be a system in the brain to make sure we do this. And there has to be a system of pleasure and pain to make sure we do it and incentivize it. Well, we now know that that system exists. It was discovered about 5 years ago by Irving Biederman at the University of Southern California. He found that there is a natural opiate that is released whenever you get an idea or comprehend a new idea. And that opiate sends a signal to the basal striatum, which stimulates the dopamine system that gives us this pop of pleasure. The eureka moment. When you get an idea, it's like, whoo, that felt good. And so if we create a workplace where we say to our employees, you guys are part of the research and development team. If you get an idea, I want to hear about it. And you get people thinking creatively and looking for solutions and solving problems, they're going to get these highs as you put these two and two together. You get this click, you get this idea. Some people live for that. Anybody live for that creative pleasure of getting an idea? Okay, me as well. That's my number one motivational button right there. There's another pleasure associated with newness, novelty, creativity, curiosity. When we see something we've never seen before, our brain gets stimulated by a type of dopamine receptor called a dopamine 5 receptor. And if you take that receptor out of a rat, it just huddles in the corner and doesn't explore its environment. Humans have that same receptor, and it makes us curious. Who's curious, likes to explore? Me too. So if you have a workplace and you don't allow people to explore and come up with new ideas, is that an addition to their emotional paycheck or a deduction? That's a deduction. So it's not hard to turn that on. You just say to your employees, we want you to think, we want you to be creative, and we're going to have a process to take your ideas and help you develop them. If you do that, you're aligning with human nature, and you're turning on one of these natural highs that's built into the system that makes people, want to work hard. The next one is the drive to acquire. Drive to acquire anything, a skill, a piece of property, anything that our culture values. If our culture values certain assets, it could be physical assets, it could be our physical body assets, it could be our our professional assets and knowledge assets, our skill assets. Every time we develop a skill or get one of these key assets, our self-esteem ratchets upward. We walk tall, feel proud, and that's the most important form of a reward because it stays with you. It's not a one-time spike like that innovation eureka moment. This is something that you feel good today, tomorrow, the next day, the next day. The best example for me was when I got my black belt in karate. I was badass, and I've walked a little taller ever since, because it just boosted my self-esteem, and you feel better, you feel more confident, and that's something we want our employees to have. We want them to feel like confident experts who are really good at what they do, and we have to help them become that expert. And that gives a huge bump to that emotional paycheck. This is the easy one, the achievement drive. That's the pleasure of a win that the reward and recognition industry is already doing a marvelous job pressing. When somebody does a good job, you give them an attaboy, you maybe give them a plaque saying, thank you for your service, here's what you did. And they can look at that plaque the rest of their lives, and each time they get this pop of pleasure, this pleasure of achievement. So that's the easy one. So we're going to go to the next one. And the drive to bond, the drive to have close interpersonal relationships, because there's another neurotransmitter in our brain called oxytocin, the relationship hormone. When we pet our dog or hug our kids or go out with our buddies for beer and high five, oxytocin is released. It is the force that keeps us together. If you turned off oxytocin in all of our brains, we wouldn't care about each other anymore and we'd scatter like cats. And so if you create a workplace environment that encourages people to have really honest, committed relationships with one another, that's hugely important. So when you come into the workplace, you're coming into a family who cares about you, you care about them, you're all kind of part of the same entity, and a very important form of reward. And then the last drive is the drive to defend. And that's the motivational button we don't want to press. We don't want to threaten people's assets because they're going to go ballistic on us and do all kinds of negative things, and they're going to become enemies and disengage, and it's going to cost us, lots of money. But you get the idea here that this is wired into us. These are really core needs. There's specific neurotransmitters that are regulating these feelings. And if we can create a workplace and design it around those 5 drives, we're going to go bananas, as Steve and Holly are going to explain shortly, because they're going to talk about their success story using this specific approach. So there's 5 thermostats. If you help your employees optimize their thermostats, they're going to get all these good feelings. Those are I call them the productive highs or productive pleasures. And that's what that bonus, that emotional bonus was on the paycheck. You got your monetary pay and benefits, and you get that emotional bonus tapped on top. Well, that's composed of these positive feelings radiating out from the 5 thermostats. So that's how you create it. You create a workplace that helps people balance these 5 core needs. So here's what happens. If we can press those 5 motivational buttons, employees win because their work becomes much more intrinsically rewarding. They love coming to work. If they were independently wealthy, they would come just for the fun of it. Managers win because employees are more energetic, proactive, require less oversight and hand-holding. It's just a lot easier to work with them because they want to do a good job. They're thinking ahead. They don't have to be told how to do every little thing. They're acting more like owners than renters. Customers win because they get better goods and services delivered with a smile, because everybody's jazzed. Everyone's having a great time doing what human beings are supposed to do in a human way. We're aligning with human nature. You get the best outcome for everybody. Shareholders win because guess what? How much more money do you make if you have, say, 30% engaged employees versus 70% engaged employees? What do you think? Would you double profitability, double market share, and cut employee turnover in half, say? And that's exactly what we're finding, is that when you turn on these natural systems, you can double productivity, double profitability, become a best place to work in your location. And it's not a small effect, it's a big effect. Because we're so bad at it now, if we get it right, there's a big bump. I would like you guys to make a commitment today. Just like in The Matrix, the movie The Matrix, Neo, Morpheus comes up to Neo and says, okay, Neo, if you take the red pill, you go back into the Matrix. And you just forget we ever met. You go back to that life. Take the blue pill, you go down the 5-drive rabbit hole. And that will, I believe, take you to a much better place where employees enjoy their work more, companies are more productive, customers are happier, shareholders are happier. That's the better place I'm promising you. Which one do you want? The red pill stays the same, or the blue pill? And I'm serious. I'd like everybody to write down, are you going to take the red or the blue pill? Red stays the same, blue, we go down the 5-drive rabbit hole. Blue pill, I heard them. So let's talk to Steve and Holly now, because they've gone down the rabbit hole and they're going to report on what happened down there.
I'm Steve Swanson. I'm the president of McFarland State Bank. This is Holly Hoyer, who's the vice president of HR for our bank. And I'm going to just briefly explain how we started studying. Paul mentioned a lot about his book, but it's called Primal Management. I'm just going to give a real-life example of what our company did. This is just going to take 5 minutes. We were struggling with a few challenges in our organization: efficiency, productivity, and we were looking at doing our own sort of reboot. And one of our directors challenged me in a board meeting saying, maybe you should look at your culture first. And he made a suggestion. He had known Paul. And so I thought, okay, that's interesting. Maybe that wouldn't be a bad idea. Is our culture in the right spot to receive what we're going to do? So I love reading books on management and what the latest is in the industry and strategic planning and all that. So I went out and I got Paul's book and I read it, and as I was reading, I kept saying to myself, yeah, oh yeah, and it just kept one thing after another, and I realized this is really, as much as Paul's getting into, and it sometimes sounds complex because it gets in how our minds work, it's really very simple. And that's what I loved about it. You just have to attack the 5 social appetites. So what we did is we started, I passed out the book, Holly and I started reading it, and we talked with our board, and they agreed that we'd go ahead and implement a culture change at our bank. And so the next step for us was we got our management team together, which was about 16 people, and we essentially started a book club. We attacked one chapter at a time, talked about it, how we're doing, and what we think could change if we started putting some of these practices into place. And then we went about it, and once we got done with that, we then decided to kick it off to our employees. And I'm going to let Holly explain the process we went through once we kicked it off to our employees. And I'll just finish by saying the first thing we had to do was sort of assess where we're at. So we did a survey, it's called the Horsepower Survey, that is very simple, takes less than 5 minutes for everyone to do, and you can get a baseline of where you're at so you can measure how you're doing with your culture improvement. So I'll let Holly explain from there what we did, and then I'll finish up by kind of giving where we're headed after Holly explains how we got to where we're at.
Thank you. One of the things that we need to be sure of when we first started out, it kind of matches the self-esteem button. We didn't want to tell our staff or even our owner that we thought we had a horrible workplace, because we didn't. So we didn't want to say, this is a horrible workplace and we want to improve it and this is what we're going to do. We said we wanted to enhance it. We know we're good, and we were, looking at our numbers, but we knew we could be better. How can we get there? That was our question and our struggle. And as Steve mentioned, one of our board members thought this would be a good tool for us because we really need to go through our improvement process through our employees instead of thinking around them, or we really want to focus on the employees first, which sounds like a really simple idea, but as Paul shared with you, not a lot of companies go that route. So we had to kind of retool our brain. Our bank is over 110 years old, so you can imagine there's a lot of status quo maybe, or we're into this process of really comfortable culture, and we weren't necessarily broke, kind of, so why fix it? But we really knew we could be better, so we had to go about it another way. We talked about the book club, and before we launched it to our employees, the supervisor group, or our leadership group, really had to know this book first. So I think we went through that process, and then we took the survey that Steve just mentioned, and that's Paul's horsepower survey. And we took the first one October 1st of last year, and we took it then for 6 months, every single month, beginning of the month. And we started off as a point, and we could probably spend 2 hours talking about that, but our employee as a group, our employee base was like at a 3.5, 3.4 reading, and now we're like at a 5.5. And what that means is that we've made improvements, and it takes into account all those 5 buttons. And again, that's just a really big overview, but we also had to commit with the supervisor group when we first started this, is, our employee group might be suspect that, oh, here we go, we're going to try this now. How long will this last? Will this be a 3-month effort, a 2-month effort, when we get into maybe something new. So we've really had to commit to stay the course, to talk about this book. I, have my books all marked up because I have to have it in front of me, not again because the concepts are hard, but it's so easy to go back into your old behaviors and your old pattern, and we really don't want to. So we try to talk about it, or we do talk about it at every single supervisor meeting. We encourage our supervisors to talk about this with their staffs once the surveys come out and we have the results, to see how their group is doing and how the bank is doing. The other part that's really important we think, for the survey is the comment section. And we actually, Paul was nice enough to customize it a bit for us, and we actually added 2 questions, I think a couple months into the survey. And so that really told us more about where our employees' heads were at. So we really, that was probably the biggest commitment. We really wanted to find out what was happening in our employees' heads and where they were at. And that's a process that we want to continue to keep doing. Because this process is so employee first, we also reignited an activities group that planned a greater amount of employee-based activities to try to get our groups to know one another a bit better, because we know that's a really important part. That's that cooperation piece that Paul spoke of, to get to know your tribe better. We strongly encourage, but didn't dictate, our supervisors to do more with their groups. Maybe have lunches, maybe go bowling together, maybe some have taken some cooking classes together. We haven't dictated that, we've just encouraged it so that they could find ways that work for them. Because Steve didn't want to sit up here and say, okay, that group has to do that, because he didn't know those groups best individually, their supervisors did. So we've done more outreach like that. We kicked off a wellness program, which again tried to get the physical health of our employees recognized, and kind of put our money where our mouth is with that one. So we've done actual tangible activities, because at the end of the day, that's really what people are seeing, or they could, taste and feel and want to know, instead of just talking about it all day long.
We've had Blue Jean Fridays.
Oh, yeah. You can imagine, as a community bank, we're pretty conservative in our dress. I mean, just look at the 2 of us. This is crazy for me, But our dress has always been very conservative, and we asked a survey, just off the cuff, one of our meetings. We said, if you were king for a day and you could change anything within reason, we're not looking for $1 million expenditure, but what one thing would you guys really want for us to change at our bank? And so we courageously asked that, knowing that we wanted to do something with it. And what do you think the number one request was? Jeans. Can we wear jeans every Friday? And I got to hand it to our CEO, who is actually the owner of our bank, who has been in banking 40 plus years, very conservative guy, wonderfully so. He's led, and Steve have led our bank to great success. He didn't hesitate when we had this question, and the jeans thing was really, in the past, kind of hard for him. So he showed that. It seems like a silly little thing, but for him being able to say yes to that, the employees were like, oh my gosh, he must be serious about trying to listen to us. And again, those little things meant the world to a lot of people. For some of us, it's not as big of a deal to wear jeans on Fridays, but for other people, and a good majority, it's like, manna from heaven. It's just this really important thing. But those are those little touch points, those little hot buttons. What we find is that we continually have to be aware of those 5 touch points, the 5 hot buttons, and make sure that we're not pushing that self-protection one, but really talking about achievement, innovation, the competency, and what's the other one I'm forgetting? Cooperation, the tribe building. So we've been trying to do all of those things with tangible efforts, but then also challenging our supervisors to think about how they're communicating. What are they doing with their group? So it wasn't just, again, Steve dictating the whole thing. It was, you guys need to own this. And you also need to look at your own behaviors, too. Are you creating an environment that is, pushing that self-protection button? Be aware of that. We also told our supervisors, with regards to flexibility of people's different jobs, if someone needs to alter their hours or needs to alter, you have the flexibility to do that. Now, if you're customer facing and we have to have the phones answered or the customers tended to, those are different and you can figure out different things, but we gave them great flexibility to figure out what their respective groups wanted and let them do that. And again, not that we were a heavy top down, but that just wasn't something we talked about. So for Steve to be able to say to the groups, if you've got flexibility concerns or desires in your group, have at it. I want our customers tended to, most definitely. But if you can make all that happen, I'll give you the flexibility to do it. And I think that also was a big thing. Anything else you want me to touch on? Because I could talk a lot about this, but I also understand we have to keep to a time.
Yeah, I'll just finish up by saying that we've been at it, as Holly said, since last October, and we're migrating through it. The biggest change happened in the first 4 months, which is exactly what's predicted in Paul's book. And I do liken it, though, a little bit to being on a diet. You hit a plateau, and we're now trying to figure out what we do to break through that plateau so we can keep making progress, because we want to continually get better. But our scores have improved to the point where we really feel like our culture is in a pretty good spot right now, but we have a goal of being nominated as one of the best places to work in Dane County, and to get there, it's going to be more of a process for us. So we feel we're on that path, and very happy that we stumbled across primal management and all the concepts, because it is very easy to execute. And that's all I really have to say, so thank you for allowing us to come.